What if I told you that the greatest secrets of history weren't written in scrolls or carved into stone, but buried deep beneath our feet? Picture this: while kings and conquerors waged wars above ground, an invisible web of tunnels, channels, and hidden passages quietly determined the rise and fall of civilizations. These underground networks were the unsung heroes of empires, the silent architects of survival. They carried water through deserts, smuggled treasures past enemies, and sheltered rebels under the noses of tyrants. Without them, cities would have starved, armies would have faltered, and entire cultures might have vanished into dust. Think about the last time you walked through a bustling city. Maybe you passed a subway entrance or a sewer grate without a second thought. But beneath that ordinary pavement lies a legacy of extraordinary ingenuity. From the labyrinthine catacombs of Rome to the smugglers' caves along the Silk Road, these hidden spaces weren't just engineering marvels, they were acts of defiance. They whisper stories of ordinary people who outsmarted oppression, of engineers who turned darkness into lifelines, of communities that thrived because they dared to dig deeper. So let's descend together into this shadowy world, where every tunnel has a secret and every passage holds a lesson. Over the next few minutes, we'll unravel how these underground networks became the ultimate survival tool, how they moved armies, preserved knowledge, and even sparked rebellions. You'll discover why the darkest corners of history often held the brightest sparks of human creativity, and by the end, you might just find yourself peering at the ground beneath your feet a little differently. Because the truth is, the past isn't just behind us, it's right below us, waiting to be uncovered, ready to dig in. Long before skyscrapers and subway systems, ancient engineers faced a life or death challenge: how to sustain entire civilizations in environments that seemed determined to destroy them. The answer lay not in towering monuments, but in the silent, patient work of digging downward. Take Rome's Cloaca Maxima, one of the world's earliest sewer systems. Built in the 6th century before the Common Era, this underground maze didn't just carry waste, it transformed a flood-prone settlement into a city that could thrive for centuries. Meanwhile, halfway across the world in Persia, engineers faced an even more daunting obstacle: water scarcity. Their solution, the Kanat system, gently sloping underground channels that tapped into mountain aquifers and transported water through deserts without a single drop lost to evaporation. What made these systems revolutionary wasn't just their technical brilliance, but their understanding of vulnerability. While enemies attacked walls and gates, the real strength of these empires flowed beneath their feet. During sieges, when surface wells were poisoned or blocked, cities with underground water networks could outlast their attackers. The Assyrians took this concept further, digging secret tunnels beneath enemy fortifications to collapse their walls, an ancient form of siege warfare that turned the earth itself into a weapon. Perhaps most remarkably, many of these systems were built without modern surveying tools or machinery. Roman aqueduct builders used simple chorobates water-level instruments to maintain precise gradients over miles of underground stone channels. Persian Kanat diggers aligned their vertical shafts by observing the stars at night. These weren't just infrastructure projects, they were acts of faith in the future, investments so durable that some still function today. The underground networks of antiquity teach us a profound lesson: real power often lies in what remains unseen, in the quiet systems that endure when everything above ground falls into chaos. Warfare has always been a game of shadows and surprises, but few tactics unsettled enemies like the sudden appearance of soldiers from beneath their feet.
Consider the Khu Khai tunnels of Vietnam, a sprawling underground city stretching over 120 miles, complete with living quarters, hospitals, and even theaters. Vietnamese fighters used these narrow passages to vanish after ambushes, leaving American troops baffled by an enemy that seemed to melt into the earth. The psychological toll was devastating. Soldiers above ground never knew when a trapdoor might open at their feet or a shot would ring out from an invisible sniper's nest. This wasn't just fighting, it was guerrilla theater where the stage was the earth itself. Centuries earlier, medieval engineers turned tunneling into a science of siege warfare. At the 1347 siege of Calais, English miners dug silently beneath French walls, propping up tunnels with wooden beams. When the time was right, they set the supports ablaze, collapsing both the tunnels and the fortifications above. The result, a city forced to surrender without a single battering ram touching its gates. Similar tactics decided battles from Jerusalem to Constantinople, proving that sometimes the most effective weapon wasn't brute force, but patience, geometry, and a shovel. Espionage took these subterranean strategies to even darker corners. During the Cold War, East Germany's Stasi secret police built an elaborate network of listening tunnels beneath West Berlin, while Allied intelligence officers plotted escapes through sewer systems. One legendary tunnel, codenamed Operation Gold, ran 1,500 feet from west to East Berlin, allowing wiretaps on Soviet communications. These weren't just passages, they were instruments of psychological domination, spaces where paranoia festered and trust dissolved. The mere suspicion of underground activity could paralyze an enemy's decision-making, turning their own soil into a source of dread. What made these tunnels so terrifying wasn't their construction, but their defiance of conventional warfare. An army could train for open combat, but how do you prepare for an opponent who controls the ground beneath you? From ancient sappers detonating mines under castle walls to World War I soldiers laying thousands of miles of trenches, history's greatest conflicts were often won not by those who held the high ground, but by those who mastered the depth. While camel caravans and bustling market towns dominated the overland Silk Road, an entirely different kind of commerce thrived beneath the surface, literally. Beneath the watchful eyes of tax collectors and warlords, resourceful merchants carved out hidden pathways through caves, tunnels, and forgotten riverbeds. These weren't just shortcuts, they were lifelines, keeping trade alive when conflict or corruption made the open roads too dangerous. Picture a spice trader in ancient Persia, lowering his precious cargo into a concealed cellar entrance, then guiding it through a labyrinth of natural caverns to avoid an oppressive governor's tariffs. Or a group of silk weavers in China, smuggling their fabrics through mountain tunnels to reach buyers without alerting the emperor's monopoly. The ingenuity of these underground networks lay in their adaptability. In the Taklamakan Desert, where shifting sands erased surface trails, merchants used chains of hidden oases and subterranean wells to navigate. These secret water sources, passed down through generations of traders, turned one of the world's most inhospitable landscapes into a covert highway. Meanwhile, along the bustling ports of the Mediterranean, smugglers repurpose ancient catacombs originally built for burials, to store contraband silks and spices before loading them onto ships under cover of darkness. The goods that moved through these shadow routes weren't just commodities, they carried cultural fingerprints. A Buddhist manuscript might travel from India to Tibet through a monastery's secret tunnel network, while Persian glassware slipped into China through buried trade caches, altering local craftsmanship forever. What made these underground arteries so resilient was their decentralized nature. Unlike the official Silk Road, which relied on imperial protection, the hidden routes thrived on anonymity.
No single ruler could control them because no one fully knew their extent. Bandits might raid a surface caravan, but how do you ambush a shipment moving through a maze of uncharted caves? This fluidity allowed trade to continue even during the Mongol invasions or the collapse of dynasties. When empires fell, the underground markets simply rerouted. The legacy of this shadow silk road lingers in unexpected ways. Modern archaeologists have uncovered troves of goods buried near these covert pathways, not as lost treasures, but as intentional stashes left by merchants planning to return. Some tunnels still bear the grooves of countless ropes dragging goods through darkness, silent witnesses to the determination of those who refuse to let commerce die. Today, as borders tighten and tariffs rise, the spirit of those underground traders lives on, reminding us that where there's demand, human creativity will always find a way, even if it means digging deeper. Beneath the bustling streets of Paris, where tourists flock to the Eiffel Tower and sidewalk cafes, lies another city entirely, one built of bones and silence. Paris catacombs stretch over 200 miles, a subterranean maze holding the remains of 6 million people. But these tunnels weren't just a solution to overflowing cemeteries. They became a refuge for revolutionaries, artists, and outcasts. During the French Revolution, rebels used the catacombs to evade capture, plotting in chambers lined with skulls. Centuries later, World War II resistance fighters hid ammunition in the same passages, turning graves into arsenals. The dead, it seemed, still had a role to play in the living world. Rome's catacombs tell an even older story. Early Christians, persecuted by the Roman Empire, transformed burial tunnels into secret churches. Beneath the Appian Way, worshippers gathered by candlelight to practice their forbidden faith, carving crosses and fish symbols into the soft tufa stone. These hidden chapels preserved not just bodies but beliefs, a spiritual underground railroad that kept Christianity alive when it could have been erased. The catacombs became living archives, their walls etched with prayers and portraits of saints, creating a sacred gallery in the dark. What's startling is how these spaces blurred the line between the past and present. In Naples, the Fontanelle Cemetery, a cavern filled with skulls, became the center of a cult where locals adopted skeletons, praying to them as intermediaries between worlds. In Malta, the Hypogeum's acoustic chambers amplified whispers into eerie echoes, possibly used for rituals that connected the living with the dead. These weren't just burial sites, they were thresholds where cultures negotiated with mortality itself. The catacombs also reveal unexpected acts of defiance. In Odessa, a sprawling network of limestone tunnels, originally quarried for building materials, became a hideout for smugglers and a headquarters for partisans during World War II. Soviet soldiers nicknamed it the Underground Fortress, where resistance fighters could disappear for weeks, surviving on smuggled supplies. Even today, urban explorers report finding relics, rusting weapons, faded maps, left behind like echoes of rebellion. Perhaps the most haunting lesson of these underground cities is their dual nature. They were places of both endings and beginnings, where the departed sheltered the living and darkness preserved light. When Parisians relocated bones from cemeteries to the catacombs in the 1700s, workers reported hearing laughter and music drifting through the tunnels at night, as if the dead were celebrating their new home. Whether myth or reality, the story captures the strange vitality of these spaces. They remind us that beneath every great city lies not just earth and stone, but layers of memory, resistance, and resilience waiting to be uncovered. The soaring arches of Roman aqueducts have become symbols of ancient ingenuity, but their true brilliance lay in what they concealed. While the above-ground structures dazzled with their grandeur, nearly 80% of Rome's water system ran silently underground, a hidden lattice of channels ensuring survival when surface routes were vulnerable. Take the Aqua Pier, Rome's first aqueduct built in 312 before the Common Era. Its underground route through volcanic rock wasn't just an engineering choice, it was wartime strategy. When the Gauls besieged Rome in 290, the buried channels kept water flowing while attackers poisoned surface springs. Beneath the Appian Way, surveyors achieved feats that still baffle modern engineers. Using nothing but chorobates wooden levels filled with water, they maintained precise gradients, sometimes as slight as 1 foot per mile. A miscalculation of mere inches could leave whole neighborhoods dry or trigger destructive flooding. The Aqua Claudia's underground sections demonstrate their mastery, tunneling through mountains with ventilation shafts so precisely spaced that air pressure kept water moving smoothly. These weren't just pipes, they were liquid highways with rest stops. Purpose-built sedimentation tanks along the route filtered debris, while inverted siphon systems used lead pipes to cross valleys without losing elevation. The aqueducts' hidden nature made them resilient. During the Gothic Wars in the 6th century, besiegers repeatedly cut the visible arcades, only to find Rome's fountains still flowing. What they couldn't see were the emergency diversion tunnels' bypass routes activated by simple sluice gates. Modern Rome still drinks from the Aqua Virgin, a 2,000-year-old aqueduct whose original underground channels supply the Trevi fountain. Its builders embedded secret access points behind false walls, allowing repairs without exposing the system to sabotage. Perhaps most remarkably, these networks became templates for empire. When Hadrian built aqueducts in distant provinces, he replicated Rome's dual approach, showy arches to impress locals, but vital underground stretches only the military could map. Today's cities unconsciously mirror this strategy. New York's water tunnels run deep beneath skyscrapers, while London's Victorian sewers still function beneath modern upgrades. The lesson echoes across millennia. The structures that endure aren't always the ones we see, but the ones we wisely bury. In the blistering heat of Persia's deserts, where the sun could scorch the earth to dust, an ancient civilization cracked the code to survival, not by fighting nature, but by working with it. The Kanat system, a network of underground channels stretching thousands of miles, didn't just bring water to the surface. It rewrote the rules of living in arid lands. Picture this: at the base of a snow-capped mountain, workers dug vertical shafts deep into the earth until they hit the water table. Then, with painstaking precision, they carved gently sloping tunnels, sometimes stretching over 30 miles, to guide that water downhill to thirsty farmlands and cities. The genius wasn't just in the engineering, but in the physics. By keeping the water underground, they prevented evaporation under the desert sun, losing barely a drop along the journey. These weren't solo projects, but community lifelines. Villages along a Kanat's path formed water cooperatives, with families taking turns to maintain their section of the tunnel. Specialized workers called mucanes descended into the shafts using nothing but ropes and leather buckets, clearing silt and reinforcing walls with baked clay rings. Their work was so vital that Persian law carved out protections. Tampering with a qanat carried harsher penalties than stealing gold. The system became a social contract in stone and water, binding communities together across generations. The qanat's impact transformed empires. In central Persia, the city of Gonabad thrived around a qanat system dating back to the Achaemenid dynasty. Its tunnels still irrigate fields today after 2,500 years. When Alexander the Great marched through Persia, his engineers were stunned to find lush gardens blooming in the desert, all fed by these hidden veins. The Sasanians later perfected the system, using qanats to supply their legendary paradise gardens, not just displays of wealth, but prototypes of sustainable agriculture. What's often overlooked is how qanats shaped culture as much as landscape. Persian poetry likened the tunnels to veins carrying lifeblood, while Zoroastrian texts revered them as sacred gifts from the earth. The technology spread along trade routes, influencing water systems from Morocco to China. Even today, as modern wells deplete groundwater, villages from Afghanistan to Oman are reviving ancient qanats, proof that the old ways sometimes hold the wisest solutions. The quiet legacy of these tunnels whispers a timeless truth. Civilization doesn't flourish by conquering nature, but by listening to its rhythms and moving beneath its surface. While chaos and conquest swept across medieval Europe, quiet revolutions unfolded beneath monastery floors and behind cloistered walls. Monks in remote abbeys like Ireland's Skellig Michael or Switzerland's St. Gallen didn't just pray, they became the librarians of civilization, copying texts by candlelight in scriptoriums designed to withstand Viking raids. Picture a 9th century scribe hunched over vellum, painstakingly replicating Euclid's geometry or Plato's dialogues while winter winds howled outside. Each stroke of his quill was an act of defiance against oblivion. The scale of this intellectual underground was staggering. At Monte Cassino in Italy, Benedictine monks built a labyrinth of cellars to protect manuscripts from Lombard invaders, hiding Aristotle's works beneath wine casks. Irish monasteries like Clonmacnoise created book satchels, waterproof leather cases allowing precious texts to be hurled into bogs during attacks, then recovered years later with the ink miraculously preserved. These weren't just storage solutions, they were time capsules engineered for apocalypse. What made these networks so resilient was their decentralization. Unlike the great libraries of Alexandria or Constantinople, which fell to single disasters, monastic knowledge lived in scattered fragments. A complete classical text might be split across a dozen abbeys, one chapter safeguarded in a Welsh mountain monastery, another buried beneath a French vineyard. When Charlemagne sought to revive learning in the 8th century, his scholars had to send envoys across Europe to reassemble these puzzle pieces. The monks' true innovation wasn't just preservation, but transformation. As they copied, they annotated Christianizing pagan texts, reconciling Aristotle with theology, even inventing new punctuation that made ancient works more readable. In the process, they created something unprecedented, a living tradition where Virgil's poetry could inspire Gregorian chants, and Roman engineering treatises informed cathedral construction. The illuminated manuscripts they produced, like the Book of Kells, weren't mere copies but artistic rebirths, their vibrant colors symbolizing light surviving darkness. Perhaps most remarkably, these networks transcended Europe's fractures. Irish monks corresponded with Byzantine scholars through secret maritime routes, while Jewish translators in Spain later funneled rediscovered texts into Arabic and Latin. The monastic underground became a cross-continental web, proving that ideas could travel farther than armies. Today, when we read a medieval manuscript's margin note, it is bitter work, but the reward is heaven. We hear the voice of those who refused to let the future die, one Inca letter at a time. Beneath the sun-drenched cliffs of the Caribbean, where tourists now snap photos of turquoise waters, lay a secret world of shadow and strategy. Pirate coves like Port Royal's infamous Lime Cay weren't just hideouts, they were meticulously designed hubs of illicit trade. Natural caves were expanded into labyrinthine strongholds, with submerged entrances accessible only at high tide to deter pursuers. Inside, tunnels branched like spider webs, some leading to freshwater springs, others to hidden docks where stolen goods could be loaded onto waiting ships under cover of darkness. The real genius of these spaces wasn't just concealment, but efficiency. At Nassau's Pirate's Lair, a system of pulley-operated trapdoors allowed crews to move cargo from ship to cave without ever exposing it on open beaches. The Mediterranean's smuggling networks operated with even greater sophistication. Along the Dalmatian coast, limestone caverns became interchangeable storehouses. One might hold Venetian silks one week, Ottoman spices the next, their locations known only through coded maps etched onto sailors' compasses. Corsican smugglers took this secrecy further, building entire false cliff faces that swung open to reveal caverns stocked with contraband. These weren't random stashes, but calculated distribution centers. A single cave on Malta's western shore might receive tobacco from North Africa, redistribute it to French traders, then pivot to storing gunpowder for Greek revolutionaries within a fortnight. What truly unsettled colonial powers wasn't the theft, but the parallel economy these spaces enabled. When Spanish galleons seized a pirate stronghold in the 1600s, they often found ledgers recording transactions with colonial governors and merchant elites. The underground trade routes created strange bedfellows. A British naval officer might publicly hang a smuggler by day, then purchase his confiscated French brandy by night. This duality reshaped global commerce. Tea smuggled into England through Cornish sea caves undercut the East India Company's monopoly, forcing price drops that eventually sparked the Boston Tea Party across the Atlantic. The legacy of these hideouts lingers in unexpected ways. Modern divers exploring the Blue Grotto off Capri still find ceramic shards from amphorae once used to transport stolen olive oil, while sonar scans of Caribbean seafloors reveal artificial tunnels extending far beyond mapped caves. These weren't just holes in rock, they were the physical manifestation of resistance, proving that even the mightiest empires couldn't control every inch of their coastlines. The pirates and smugglers who carved these spaces understood a fundamental truth. Sometimes the best way to challenge power isn't through confrontation, but through disappearance. The story of the Underground Railroad often conjures images of secret handshakes and moonlit escapes, but few realize how much of this freedom network literally traveled underground. Beneath farmhouses and church basements across America, a web of hidden tunnels and camouflaged trapdoors formed a physical pathway to liberty. In places like Ripley, Ohio, abolitionists dug passages connecting their homes to the riverbank, allowing fugitives to move unseen from station to station. One remarkable tunnel in Indiana stretched nearly a mile from a sympathetic farmer's root cellar to a Quaker meeting house, its walls lined with wooden planks to muffle sounds, its ceiling just high enough for a person to crawl through. What made these tunnels extraordinary wasn't their engineering, but their invisible coordination. A seamstress in Maryland might signal a safe route by hanging laundry in a specific pattern, while free black sailors on Chesapeake Bay boats used work songs to encode directions to underground stations. The system relied on skills passed through generations' knowledge of which stars to follow for navigation, which plants could treat tracking dogs' scent, and how to read the landscape for natural hiding places. In swampy regions like Virginia's Great Dismal, maroon communities, groups of escaped slaves built entire villages on hidden islands, connected to the mainland by submerged log roads only they could navigate. The railroad's true power lay in its duality. It was both a physical and psychological weapon against slavery. Plantation owners circulated exaggerated tales of its reach, fueling paranoia that any basement or cornfield might conceal an escape route. In reality, most journeys combined short underground stretches with daring overland treks. Harriet Tubman herself preferred moving through forests at night, using moss growth on trees to maintain direction. But the myth of an all-encompassing subterranean network served its purpose. It made the institution of slavery feel porous and vulnerable. perhaps the most overlooked aspect was the railroad's continental scale. Routes extended as far north as Canada, where former slaves established thriving communities like Amber Valley in Alberta. To the south, the Mexican border became another haven. The Spanish-speaking republic had abolished slavery decades before America, and its remote ranchlands offered new beginnings. Seminole tribes in Florida sheltered escapees, blending them into their communities through intermarriage. This wasn't just an American story, but a hemispheric movement proving oppression's borders were more fragile than they appeared. The legacy lives on in unexpected ways. Modern archaeologists using ground-penetrating radar have rediscovered forgotten tunnel sections beneath Brooklyn homes and Pennsylvania barns. In Delaware, a previously unknown underground chamber was found beneath a 19th-century schoolhouse, its walls still bearing candle soot marks. These silent spaces remind us that courage takes many forms. Sometimes it's not about standing tall, but knowing when to move unseen, and that freedom's path doesn't always run in daylight. When the clock struck midnight on January 17, 1920, something extraordinary happened across America. Entire social lives vanished underground. Prohibition didn't just ban alcohol. It forced the nation's nightlife into a shadowy parallel world of hidden doors and whispered passwords. Behind unmarked facades in Chicago's Loop or beneath Manhattan's butcher shops, speakeasies thrived with a theatricality that turned every drink into a small revolution. The Cotton Club in Harlem famously hid behind a florist shop. Patrons would ask for a non-existent Mr. Jackson before being ushered through a refrigerated meat locker into a glittering jazz palace. This wasn't just evasion, it was performance art against Puritanism. The real genius of these spaces lay in their camouflage. Some masqueraded as funeral homes with caskets repurposed as liquor storage. Others, like Detroit's famed Tommy's in the Sticks, operated from moving trolley cars, serving cocktails through hidden compartments while police searched stationary buildings. In Seattle, a speakeasy disguised as an umbrella repair shop used hollowed-out umbrella handles to pass flasks to customers. The creativity extended to the drinks themselves. Bathtub gin, doctored with juniper berries and glycerin to mimic the real thing, or near beer, spiked with alcohol smuggled in industrial disinfectant bottles. But speakeasies did more than skirt the law. They rewrote social rules. For the first time, white and black patrons mingled in jazz clubs like Chicago's Sunset Cafe, where a young Louis Armstrong played alongside white musicians. Women, previously barred from saloons, became regulars at these covert bars, their presence normalized by the shared thrill of illegality. The underground became a great equalizer, where socialites rubbed elbows with factory workers, united by their disdain for the Volstead Act. Law enforcement's cat-and-mouse games only fueled the spectacle. Corrupt officers might accept bribes through secret slots in speakeasy walls, while others employed needle beer tests, poking wooden needles into drinks to check for illicit alcohol residue. Bootleggers responded with alky cookers, mobile distilleries hidden in false bottom trucks that could vanish down alleyways at the first sign of trouble. The most brazen operators, like New York's Oni Madden, installed hydraulic floors in their clubs that could raise the entire bar to a hidden upper level during raids, leaving baffled police staring at an empty room. Prohibition's legacy wasn't just about alcohol, it was a masterclass in human ingenuity under constraint. When the ban finally lifted in 1933, many speakeasies simply went legitimate, their hidden doors swinging open to the public. But the spirit of those underground years never fully faded. Today's password-protected cocktail bars and hidden restaurants in major cities owe their mystique to those defiant basement revelers who proved that when you push pleasure underground, it doesn't disappear, it just gets more inventive. The Cold War transformed entire nations into architects of their own underworlds, digging not for treasure or transport, but for the chance to outlast doomsday. Beneath Washington, D.C., a secret city took shape. The Greenbrier bunker, carved into the Allegheny Mountains, could house the entire U.S. Congress with a 90-day supply of food, its walls lined with radiation-absorbing copper. Across the Atlantic, Britain's Burlington complex sprawled beneath Wiltshire's countryside, a subterranean metropolis with streets named after London landmarks, hospitals, even a broadcasting studio to reassure survivors the government still functioned. These weren't just shelters, they were mirrors held up to society's deepest fears, concrete manifestations of the unthinkable. What set Cold War bunkers apart was their eerie duality. They were both fortresses and time capsules. Switzerland's Sonnenberg Tunnel, designed to protect 20,000 civilians, included decontamination showers and a morgue with body bags pre-labeled for radiation victims. Soviet bunkers like Moscow's Metro too featured blast doors weighing 80 tons, yet also stocked libraries with Marx's works and chess sets, as if nuclear winter might be endured as a prolonged study retreat. The most unsettling details were often the smallest. East Germany's bunker toilets flushed with seawater, since fresh water would be too precious to waste after an attack. The psychological impact of these spaces rippled far beyond their concrete walls. Civil defense drills sent schoolchildren scrambling under desks, while fallout shelter signs turned city basements into symbols of both safety and dread. In Canada, the Diefenbunker's architects included a panic room with padded walls, anticipating breakdowns among officials trapped underground for months. Paradoxically, the very existence of these bunkers fueled anxiety. Why build them if annihilation wasn't inevitable? Yet within this darkness flickered dark humor and defiance. Some shelters doubled as theaters. Sweden's Klara bunker under Stockholm hosted jazz concerts between crisis drills. Homeowners in Nebraska built backyard fallout shelters as status symbols, stocking them with board games and cocktail shakers. The Soviet Union even designed a portable bunker, the ZIL-13-0, a limousine with a lead-lined roof, allowing Politburo members to conduct business while driving through atomic wastelands. Today, declassified bunkers stand as monuments to a surreal chapter when humanity prepared to meet its end by retreating into the earth. Tours of Berlin's Atomschutzraum reveal walls still lined with vintage tins of survival crackers, while Albania's Enver Hoxha left behind a landscape pockmarked with 700,000 concrete bunkers, one for every 4 citizens. These crumbling structures whisper an uncomfortable truth. Sometimes the most enduring legacies are those we built hoping never to use. Beneath the glittering skylines of today's megacities, a second, shadowy metropolis thrives, one built not of steel and glass, but of concrete conduits and humming fiber optics. New York's labyrinthine underbelly stretches far beyond its iconic subway, encompassing steam tunnels that hiss like sleeping dragons, century-old pneumatic mail tubes now repurposed for internet cables, and even clandestine passages beneath Grand Central Terminal, once used by VIPs to avoid public scrutiny. London's underground holds equally startling secrets: disused stations converted into secure data centers, Victorian sewer lines retrofitted with modern utilities, and the mysterious Kingsway Exchange, a nuclear-proof telecommunications bunker hidden beneath Holborn, its full purpose still classified. These modern tunnels inherit the ancient principle of layered functionality. Consider Tokyo's sprawling floodwater diversion system, an underground cathedral of concrete silos capable of swallowing entire rivers during typhoons, a 21st century answer to Rome's Cloaca Maxima. Boston's Big Dig didn't just bury highways, it created subterranean parks and shopping concourses, turning urban blight into buried treasure. Even Dubai, a city known for soaring towers, has invested billions in the Deep Tunnel Network, a climate-proof utility grid designed to withstand rising temperatures and sea levels. The real marvel lies in how these spaces evolve. Abandoned subway tunnels in Cincinnati now house mushroom farms thriving in the constant 60-degree darkness, while Oslo's old bomb shelters have become Europe's largest underground vineyard. Beneath Singapore's streets, automated, mole robots constantly expand utility tunnels, their routes programmed to avoid disturbing the foundations of skyscrapers overhead. This isn't just infrastructure, it's urban acupuncture with tunnels as the needles relieving pressure points in increasingly congested cities. Security concerns have driven some of the most astonishing innovations. Washington, D.C.'s underground includes electromagnetic pulse-proof tunnels linking critical government sites, while Moscow's Metro 2 allegedly contains a secret subway line connecting Kremlin bunkers. Private entities get equally creative. Amazon's Seattle headquarters reportedly includes subterranean delivery tunnels, and Disney World's utilidors allow costumed characters to traverse the park unseen, preserving the magic above ground. Perhaps most surprisingly, these spaces have birthed new ecosystems. Bacteria discovered in New York's subway tunnels produce previously unknown antibiotics, while London's underground mosquito, a distinct species evolved in the tube's warm tunnels, demonstrates nature's adaptability. Artists too have claimed these spaces, from Berlin's underground techno clubs to Melbourne's sanctioned tunnel graffiti galleries. The modern underground isn't just functional, it's become a cultural petri dish, where society's most innovative and rebellious impulses incubate away from daylight scrutiny. As cities grow denser and climate threats multiply, our relationship with the underground is entering uncharted territory. Seoul's Dokkaebae Road repurposed a neglected overpass into a sunken urban garden, while Helsinki's master plan reserves vast underground areas for future expansion. The lesson from these modern labyrinths is clear. The cities of tomorrow won't just rise upward, they'll dig deeper, continuing humanity's ancient dance with the world beneath our feet. The digital age didn't eliminate humanity's craving for hidden spaces, it simply reinvented them. The dark web, a sprawling network of encrypted sites inaccessible to standard browsers, operates by the same principles as ancient smuggling tunnels or medieval catacombs: anonymity, secrecy, and layers of protection. To access it, users navigate through digital labyrinths like Tor, bouncing their connections through multiple relays across the globe until their origins become untraceable. This isn't just technology, it's the modern equivalent of a merchant slipping through a hidden cave entrance, leaving no footprints behind. What makes the dark web fascinating is its duality. On one hand, it's a sanctuary for whistleblowers and journalists working under oppressive regimes. Secure drop sites here have exposed corporate corruption and human rights abuses, while activists use encrypted forums to organize protests without government surveillance. During the Arab Spring, dark web platforms became vital communication hubs when authoritarian regimes shut down social media. In these shadows, the digital underground serves the same purpose as the hidden chambers where early Christians worshipped or the tunnels of the Underground Railroad. It protects the vulnerable from those who would silence them. Yet, like any hidden network, the dark web has its darker corners. Black markets peddle everything from stolen data to counterfeit passports, operating with the same discretion as Prohibition-era speakeasies. The infamous Silk Road Marketplace, shut down by the FBI in 2013, functioned like a digital version of the covert trade routes beneath the ancient Silk Road, complete with escrow systems and user ratings. Law enforcement agencies now engage in a high-tech game of cat and mouse, deploying algorithms to track illegal transactions, just as medieval kings posted guards at tunnel entrances. The most surprising aspect, how ordinary much of the dark web actually is. Beyond the sensational headlines lie libraries of banned books, academic journals paywalled elsewhere, and forums discussing everything from privacy rights to obscure hobbies. It's a reminder that hidden spaces have always hosted both rebellion and routine, whether it's a Roman aqueduct worker maintaining channels or a modern programmer sharing open-source code away from corporate scrutiny. This digital underground also raises profound questions about control and freedom. Governments struggle to regulate a space designed to evade borders, just as empires failed to stamp out subterranean trade routes. Meanwhile, tech companies and privacy advocates debate where to draw the line between safety and surveillance. The dark web forces us to confront an uncomfortable truth. The same tools that protect dissidents can shield criminals, and the impulse to hide isn't going anywhere. As long as there are secrets to keep or power to resist, humanity will keep digging, whether through earth or lines of code. Long before archaeologists began mapping ancient tunnels, storytellers were already weaving tales about the mysteries lurking beneath the earth. Every culture seems to have its own version of subterranean legends, from the Norse myths of Svartalfar or dark elves, forging magical weapons in underground caverns, to indigenous Australian dreamtime stories of ancestral beings shaping the landscape from below. These myths share a striking pattern. The underground isn't just a physical space, but a realm where normal rules don't apply. Time slows, treasures multiply, and creatures gain uncanny powers, all just out of sight beneath our feet. One of the most enduring underground legends is the Hollow Earth theory, which captivated everyone from 17th century astronomers to Nazi scientists. Imagine a world where the planet's crust is just a shell hiding an inner sun, vast oceans, and even advanced civilizations. The idea seems ludicrous today, but it gained traction because it mirrored real subterranean wonders. When early explorers discovered massive cave systems like Mammoth Cave in Kentucky, with its endless chambers and underground rivers, it wasn't hard to imagine they might lead to something even grander. Even now, conspiracy theorists point to anomalies like Antarctica's entrances as evidence, proving our fascination with hidden worlds refuses to fade. Fairy tales, too, are riddled with underground symbolism. Snow White's dwarves toil in mines, Rumpelstiltskin emerges from beneath floors, and trolls lurk under bridges each story, reinforcing the idea that the underground is a place of both danger and transformation. In Slavic folklore, the Zime, a dragon-like creature, guards treasures in mountain caves, while Celtic legends speak of the Owls She, fairy folk who retreat to underground mounds to avoid human contact. These stories served a practical purpose, warning children away from unstable mines or sinkholes, while also explaining the eerie sounds, dripping water, shifting rocks, that echoed from the earth. Modern pop culture continues this tradition. Tolkien's Moria mines, the underground vaults of Fallout, and even the Upside Down in Stranger Things all tap into our primal curiosity about what lies beneath. Video games like Minecraft let players build entire subterranean kingdoms, while urban legends persist about secret tunnels beneath Disneyland or government bunkers hiding extraterrestrial artifacts. The line between myth and reality blurs in places like Derinkuyu, Turkey, a real underground city that sheltered thousands, yet feels like something straight from a fantasy novel. What unites these stories across time is their psychological power. The underground represents the unknown parts of ourselves, the buried memories, hidden talents, or fears we suppress. Carl Jung called it the shadow self, while Freud saw caves as symbols of the unconscious mind. When we stare into a dark tunnel or hear whispers in a catacomb, we're confronting more than empty space. We're facing the parts of existence that remain unexplored. That's why these myths endure, not because we believe in literal trolls or hollow planets, but because they remind us that the world and ourselves are far deeper than we can see. Archaeologists armed with ground-penetrating radar and 3D mapping technology are rewriting history one subterranean scan at a time. In 2018, beneath the limestone streets of Naples, researchers stumbled upon a network of Greek-era tunnels dating back to the 4th century before the Common Era. Passages used to transport volcanic tuff for construction, then repurposed as bomb shelters during World War II. This palimpsest of human adaptation reveals a startling truth. We've been layering new purposes onto old tunnels for millennia. Over in the jungles of Guatemala, laser scans uncovered a 150-mile Mayan superhighway of raised causeways and underground channels connecting cities, proof of an organized civilization far more advanced than previously believed. What makes these discoveries revolutionary isn't just their age, but their accidental nature. A farmer in Turkey's Cappadocia region pruning his apple trees in 1963 broke through soft volcanic rock into Derinkuyu, an 18-story underground city with ventilation shafts, wineries, and rolling stone doors to block invaders. Capable of sheltering 20,000 people, its discovery shattered assumptions about prehistoric engineering. Similarly, workers digging a subway line in Thessaloniki, Greece, in 2012 hit a 2,300-year-old marble road perfectly preserved 8 feet underground, flanked by the foundations of shops still bearing ancient price graffiti. The earth guards its secrets until the moment it chooses to reveal them. The tools of modern archaeology act like X-ray vision for history. In Rome, muon tomography, a technique using cosmic rays to map dense structures, revealed a hidden chamber beneath the Colosseum, possibly used for gladiator storage or sacred rituals. Meanwhile, divers exploring the Yucatan's underwater cave systems found 9,000-year-old human remains alongside extinct animal bones, suggesting these flooded tunnels were once dry shelters during the last ice age. Each discovery forces us to reconsider timelines. When engineers drilling near China's terracotta warriors struck a chamber filled with liquid mercury in 2020, it lent credence to ancient texts describing Emperor Qin's tomb as having rivers of mercury, mirroring his empire's waterways. Perhaps most remarkably, these underground finds are challenging colonial narratives. In Peru, local archaeologists using drone photography identified vast Cochas subterranean water reservoirs built by the Inca beneath Spanish colonial cities. The conquistadors had literally built their dominance atop indigenous hydrological genius. Similarly, Australia's Brewerina fish traps, an ancient aboriginal network of stone channels, were found to extend far beyond their visible sections, with underground components managing water flow for millennia. These technologies, once dismissed as primitive, are now recognized as sophisticated ecological adaptations. The thrill lies in realizing how fragmentary our knowledge remains. 90% of Egypt's Saqqara necropolis is still unexcavated, and new scans suggest secret chambers may branch from the known tunnels under the Step Pyramid. In Scotland, thermal imaging revealed anomalies beneath Rosslyn Chapel, the same site famous for its ties to the Knights Templar, hinting at chambers that could rewrite theories about medieval knowledge preservation. As long as archaeologists keep listening to the whispers beneath their feet, history's greatest stories may still be waiting in the dark. There's something primal about the pull of hidden spaces, a whisper from our earliest ancestors that still echoes in our modern minds. Psychologists trace this fascination back to humanity's most basic survival instincts. For thousands of years, caves sheltered us from predators and storms, their dark embrace offering protection when the surface world turned hostile. That ancient programming lingers in the way children instinctively build blanket forts or treehouse hideaways, creating miniature sanctuaries where they control who enters and who stays out. Adults aren't so different. Consider the enduring appeal of cozy basement dens, wine cellars, or even the humble backyard shed, all modern variations on that same protective theme. But safety isn't the only draw. Hidden spaces also satisfy our deep-seated need for autonomy and secrecy. Think of the thrill of discovering a forgotten crawl space in an old house or stumbling upon a concealed compartment in an antique desk. These moments tap into what psychologists call environmental mastery, the joy of uncovering or creating spaces that others don't know or can't access. Studies of urban explorers reveal this same drive. Their adrenaline comes not just from risk, but from the exhilaration of mapping uncharted territories, however mundane they might seem to outsiders. A storm drain becomes a personal frontier, a disused subway tunnel a kingdom of one's own. The underground also serves as a psychological blank slate, free from society's judgments and expectations. In the depths, social hierarchies flatten. Whether you're a medieval monk in a scriptorium or a Cold War scientist in a bunker, the rules of the surface world fade. This liberation explains why countercultures have always gravitated to basements and back rooms, from jazz musicians in Prohibition-era speakeasies to punk bands in 1970s New York clubs like CBGB. Even today, the allure persists in the cottagecore trend of transforming root cellars into whimsical reading nooks, or the global fascination with underground tiny homes. Perhaps most intriguing is how these spaces shape our sense of time. Without natural light or seasonal cues, underground environments create what researchers call temporal distortion. Miners and cave explorers often report losing track of hours or days, while nuclear bunker simulations show participants developing altered sleep cycles. This detachment from surface rhythms may explain why sacred spaces from the oracle chambers of Delphi to Tibetan meditation caves have so often been subterranean. The underground becomes a liminal zone where ordinary time suspends, allowing for introspection or revelation. Yet this attraction isn't universal. For some, the underground triggers claustrophobia or dread, a reminder that these spaces also represent the unknown and uncontrollable. The same tunnels that sheltered French resistance fighters could become tombs during Allied bombings. Modern doomsday preppers building underground shelters embody this duality, preparing for catastrophe while wrestling with the psychological toll of life in confinement. Even in mythology, underground realms like Hades or Hell were places of both rest and reckoning. What unites all these responses is their intensity. Whether drawn to or repelled by hidden spaces, humans rarely feel neutral about them. That emotional charge explains why underground networks have been so pivotal throughout history. They're not just physical constructs, but mirrors reflecting our deepest anxieties and aspirations. When we dig, we aren't just moving earth, we're excavating layers of meaning about safety, freedom, and what it means to truly disappear. Ancient engineers mastered something modern society is still struggling to learn: how to work with nature rather than against it. Take the Kanat systems of Persia, where water traveled for miles through gently sloping tunnels without a single pump or watt of electricity. The genius lay in their simplicity. They tapped into mountain aquifers at just the right elevation so gravity did all the work, and their underground routes prevented evaporation in the scorching desert sun. Compare that to today's water infrastructure, where energy-guzzling pumps push water uphill against its natural flow, losing up to 30% through leaky pipes and evaporation. The Qanats didn't just conserve water,
They honored the landscape's natural contours, creating oases without disrupting fragile desert ecosystems. Roman aqueducts offer another masterclass in sustainable engineering. Their underground sections were lined with pozzolana, a volcanic ash mixture that actually hardened over time when exposed to water, becoming more durable the longer it was used. Modern concrete, by contrast, cracks and erodes, requiring constant repairs that generate millions of tons of carbon emissions annually. The Romans also designed their systems with self-cleaning features. Sedimentation tanks filtered debris naturally, while strategic water flow rates prevented bacterial buildup without chemical treatments. In Spain, some Roman aqueducts still function after 2,000 years, their environmental footprint dwarfed by contemporary water plants requiring constant energy inputs. Perhaps the most striking lesson lies in how these ancient systems fostered community resilience. The qanats weren't just water channels, they were social contracts. Villages maintained them cooperatively, with water shares calculated based on labor contributions. This created a vested interest in sustainability. Overdrawing from the system would collapse the tunnels, leaving everyone thirsty. Similarly, the Inca's subterranean water storage systems in Peru, called coches, were managed through collective rituals that tied water conservation to spiritual practice. When Spanish colonizers dismantled these systems, replacing them with centralized reservoirs, they didn't just break technology, they shattered centuries of ecological wisdom encoded in tradition. Today's engineers are finally catching up to this ancient insight. In Iran, drought-stricken villages are reviving abandoned qanats instead of drilling deeper wells that deplete groundwater. California's water districts now study Roman techniques to reduce reliance on energy-intensive desalination plants. Even cutting-edge projects like Singapore's deep tunnel sewerage system draw inspiration from these old networks, using gravity-fed tunnels to minimize pumping needs. The underground past is quietly guiding our sustainable future, if we're willing to listen. The ultimate takeaway isn't about nostalgia for older technologies, but about rethinking our relationship with natural systems. Ancient tunnels worked because they mimicked nature's pattern: slow percolation instead of forced extraction, distributed networks rather than centralized control. As climate change forces harder choices, these time-tested principles offer a roadmap. Build infrastructure that bends to the landscape, share resources as a communal trust, and design for the long haul rather than quick fixes. The answers we need might not lie in flashy new inventions, but in the quiet wisdom buried beneath our feet. Urban explorers move through the shadows of our cities like ghosts, slipping into abandoned subway stations, scaling the rusted ladders of forgotten missile silos, and wading through knee-deep water in century-old utility tunnels. These modern-day adventurers aren't just thrill-seekers, they're unofficial archaeologists, uncovering layers of history that official records have overlooked or deliberately erased. Take the team that rediscovered New York's Freedom Tunnel, a massive railroad passage built in the 1930s, later used as a homeless sanctuary and graffiti gallery. Their footage revealed murals from the 1980s still intact, a time capsule of urban resilience hidden beneath Riverside Park. What drives people to crawl through pitch-black drains or descend into unstable bunkers? Part of it's the same impulse that sent medieval monks into catacombs or Cold War spies through sewer systems, the allure of spaces untouched by time. Explorers like those who documented Berlin's Teufelsberg listening station, a relic of Cold War surveillance now crumbling under layers of street art, aren't just trespassing. They're preserving memories of places too obscure for museums, too politically charged for textbooks. When Parisian urbex crews mapped the city's clandestine quarry network, a 300-mile labyrinth beneath the streets,
they found Second World War resistance graffiti alongside 19th century quarry marks, a palimpsest of hidden histories. The risks are real and the ethics complex. In Rome, explorers who ventured into Nero's buried Golden Palace faced legal repercussions, even as their photos revealed ceiling frescoes unseen for centuries. Underground Moscow's Metro 2, a rumored secret subway system for elites, has claimed lives of overconfident adventurers. Yet the most responsible explorers follow a code: take nothing but photos, leave nothing but footprints, and never disclose exact locations to prevent vandalism. Their work often bridges gaps in official records. When urban explorers in London uncovered a sealed WW2-era bunker beneath a school playground, complete with rusted typewriters and gas masks, local historians used their findings to reconstruct civilian life during the Blitz. Technology has transformed urbex into a global conversation. Drones peer into inaccessible ventilation shafts, while 3D scanners create digital models of crumbling tunnels before they collapse. Online communities crowdsource clues from vintage maps and construction blueprints, piecing together routes like detectives solving a cold case. The most compelling explorers, like those who documented Chernobyl's underground drainage pipes or Shanghai's abandoned ghost city tunnels, approach their work with reverence. They're not just chasing adrenaline, they're asking why we bury our past and what truths might surface if we dare to dig a little deeper. Their discoveries challenge conventional narratives. In Istanbul, urbex crews found Byzantine cisterns beneath modern apartments, proving the city's ancient water network was far more extensive than historians believed. Beneath Melbourne, explorers mapped a forgotten gold rush-era sewage system lined with hand-pressed bricks, each stamped with the bricklayer's name, a poignant record of immigrant laborers erased from official city histories. These explorers are the inheritors of a long tradition, from Renaissance antiquarians sketching Roman ruins to 19th century spelunkers illuminating prehistoric caves. The tools have changed, but the mission remains: to shine light where others pretend there's only darkness. What sets this era apart is its democratization of discovery. You no longer need institutional backing to uncover history, just curiosity, a good flashlight, and respect for the spaces you enter. When explorers in Detroit documented the crumbling Michigan Central Station's underground mail tunnels, they captured something profound: not just decay, but the echoes of 1,000 untold stories. Like the smugglers and rebels who once moved through these hidden arteries, today's urban explorers understand that sometimes the most important journeys aren't toward the horizon, but straight down into the Earth's silent archives. Beneath the neon glow of our overcrowded cities, a quiet revolution is taking shape, not upward into the sky, but downward into the earth. Architects and urban planners are reimagining the underground not as a last resort, but as the next frontier for sustainable living. In Tokyo, where space is more precious than gold, the Shimizu Corporation has proposed urban caverns, vast, climate-controlled spaces carved beneath the city where parks, shopping districts, and even residential towers could flourish away from the chaos above. Meanwhile, in the Arizona desert, a prototype eco-village called Arcasanti extends several stories underground, using the Earth's natural insulation to slash energy costs by 60% compared to traditional buildings. These aren't dystopian visions of bunker life, but thoughtful adaptations to the realities of urban sprawl and climate change. The appeal of underground living isn't just about saving space, it's about rethinking how we interact with our environment. Iceland's Hof residence offers a glimpse into this philosophy, with its grass-covered roof blending seamlessly into the volcanic landscape, while geothermal energy from the Earth powers its heating systems.
Similar projects in Switzerland have turned Cold War-era military tunnels into thriving vertical farms, where LED-lit mushrooms and hydroponic greens grow year-round without pesticides. The Earth's constant temperature, typically 55 degrees Fahrenheit below the frost line, creates natural efficiency that even the smartest above-ground buildings struggle to match. Luxury takes on new meaning in these subterranean spaces. A Montana-based company markets survival condos in converted missile silos, complete with swimming pools, cinemas, and hydroponic gardens, catering to billionaires preparing for climate disasters or social unrest. More egalitarian designs are emerging too, like Copenhagen's low-carbon neighborhoods, where shared underground courtyards replace private backyards, fostering community while preserving green space overhead. The common thread: these designs don't just solve problems, they reimagine what comfort and security mean in an unstable world. Technological leaps are making this possible. Advanced boring machines, like those used for London's Crossrail project, can now carve precise tunnels with minimal surface disruption. New materials like translucent concrete allow sunlight to filter dozens of feet below ground, while air scrubbing systems borrowed from spacecraft ensure ventilation feels fresh, not claustrophobic. Perhaps most crucially, biophilic design incorporating natural elements into built environments has evolved to combat the psychological challenges of subterranean life. Singapore's Jewel Changi Airport offers a blueprint with its underground rainforest and cascading indoor waterfall, proving that below ground doesn't have to mean cut off from nature. Yet the boldest experiments challenge our very notion of urban geography. China's proposed Chang'an area includes plans for inverted skyscrapers, tiered structures descending nearly 1,000 feet, connected by high-speed elevators to surface parks and transit hubs. In Norway, architects have floated the idea of the Arctic Vault City, a sunken settlement beneath permafrost designed to withstand rising global temperatures while preserving cultural heritage. These projects aren't just about retreating underground, they're about expanding our habitat in ways that could redefine city planning for centuries to come. What makes this movement so compelling is its continuity with humanity's past. From Cappadocia's ancient cave dwellings to Montreal's modern underground city, a 32-kilometer network of shops and offices, we've always returned to the earth when surface conditions grew untenable. The difference now is intentionality. Instead of reacting to threats, we're proactively designing underground spaces that don't just mimic surface life, but improve upon it, with greater energy efficiency, stronger community bonds, and resilience baked into their very foundations. As climate migration and urbanization accelerate, the cities of tomorrow may not scrape the sky, but bloom beneath it, their roots drawing sustenance from the same dark soil that sheltered our ancestors. Digging into the Earth's embrace has never been for the faint-hearted. Ancient engineers faced a relentless adversary, gravity itself, as they carved tunnels through unstable soil and rock. The Roman builders of the Cloaca Maxima, wrestling with Rome's swampy terrain, learned this the hard way. Their earliest tunnels collapsed so frequently that they began lining walls with volcanic tuff, a lightweight yet sturdy stone that could absorb moisture without crumbling. Centuries later, medieval miners battling flooding in silver mines like Germany's Rammelsburg devised wooden support grids called stulls, soaked in brine to resist rot. These weren't just fixes, they were acts of defiance against a world determined to bury their ambitions. Ventilation posed another invisible killer. The deeper workers dug, the more the air thickened with toxic gases or grew thin from oxygen starvation. Persian Kanat builders countered this with vertical shafts spaced at precise intervals, creating natural airflow like lungs drawing breath. In 19th century Cornwall, tin miners carried caged canaries, a grim but effective early warning system for carbon monoxide. When the bird stopped singing, it was time to retreat. The real breakthrough came with the invention of the Guyton de Morveau ventilator in 1783, a furnace-driven exhaust system that pulled fresh air through miles of tunnels, revolutionizing coal mining and paving the way for modern subway systems. Water, both a lifeline and a menace, demanded equally ingenious solutions. Byzantine engineers constructing cisterns beneath Constantinople faced relentless leaks until they discovered the magic of Roman concrete, a mix of lime, volcanic ash, and seawater that hardened underwater. Fast forward to the building of the London Underground in 1860, where engineer Mark Brunel borrowed from nature, designing a shield tunneling system inspired by shipworms. This segmented iron framework allowed workers to dig forward while bracing against cave-ins, inch by precarious inch. The same principle still protects engineers today, from Boston's Big Dig to Tokyo's earthquake-proof subway expansions. Lightlessness itself became a canvas for innovation. Before Edison's bulbs, miners relied on candles stuck in clay holders until fire-damp explosions proved deadly. The Davy lamp of 1815 changed everything. Its wire mesh cooling flames just enough to prevent ignition of methane gas. Yet perhaps the most elegant solution came from the silver mines of Potosi, where Spanish colonizers mirrored sunlight-down shafts using polished silver plates, creating a glittering artificial day beneath the Andes. The true marvel lies in how these challenges sparked collaboration across eras and empires. Chinese tunnel builders of the Tang dynasty used hollow bamboo reeds to measure air quality, while Victorian engineers adapted their techniques with brass telltale pipes. Modern tunnel boring machines, with their rotating cutting heads and conveyor belts, owe their DNA to the screw pumps Archimedes designed for ancient Greek mines. Each breakthrough was a baton passed through time, proving that darkness doesn't stifle ingenuity, it demands it. What unites these solutions is their refusal to accept limits. When New York's water tunnels needed repairs in the 1990s, engineers couldn't shut off the city's supply. Their answer, diver William Billy Smith descended into the pitch-black depths of the Delaware Aqueduct, a pressurized tube 90 feet underwater, to weld leaks in total darkness, guided only by touch. Like the Mukanis of Persia or the sandhogs of early Manhattan, he embodied the same relentless spirit. Where there's a will to build underground, humans will always find a way. Secrecy has always been a double-edged sword, a tool for survival that can just as easily become a weapon of control. Consider the ancient spy tunnels of Mohenjo-Daro, where rulers allegedly monitored citizens through hidden passages in the city walls. Were these early surveillance systems meant to protect the public or to consolidate elite power? The same question echoes through history, from the Vatican's infamous Passetto di Borgo, a secret escape route for popes, to Cold War East Berlin Stasi tunnels, where ordinary citizens were spied on by neighbors recruited as informants. Every hidden corridor forces us to ask, when does security become oppression, and who gets to decide? Modern surveillance takes this dilemma to dizzying new scales. London's Ring of Steel network of cameras and license plate readers, originally designed to thwart IRA bombings, now tracks millions of citizens daily. In China, facial recognition systems paired with underground data centers can identify individuals in seconds, raising stark questions about privacy versus public safety. Even democratic societies struggle with the balance should subway systems scan passengers' biometrics to prevent terrorism, if it means normalizing constant monitoring. The technology may be new, but the ethical tension is ancient. How much invisibility should power possess?
Yet some of history's most profound ethical acts relied on secrecy. The Underground Railroad's covert routes saved thousands precisely because they operated beyond the law. During World War II, the French resistance used Paris's catacombs to hide Jewish families, while in Denmark, fishermen smuggled refugees to Sweden through unmarked tunnels beneath beaches. These examples reveal a crucial distinction: secrecy that empowers the vulnerable differs fundamentally from secrecy that shields the powerful. One dismantles oppression while the other entrenches it. The digital age has amplified these stakes exponentially. Bitcoin's blockchain technology, designed as a decentralized alternative to banks, now facilitates everything from anonymous donations to Ukrainian refugees to ransomware attacks on hospitals. The dark web hosts both whistleblower platforms and black markets, proving that anonymity itself is morally neutral. It's the hands that wield it that determine its worth. This duality confronts us daily. Should governments have backdoor access to encrypted messaging apps to combat crime, if it also risks exposing activists under repressive regimes? Perhaps the most unsettling reality is how easily justifications for secrecy slide into abuse. The Manhattan Project's underground labs at Oak Ridge were built to outpace Nazi Germany, but later shrouded nuclear testing on unknowing civilians. Medieval Templar tunnels, once safeguarding religious relics, eventually hid the order's wealth from kings seeking to seize it. Even well-intentioned secrecy corrodes trust over time, a lesson learned by cities like Seattle, where officials built an extensive underground emergency network in the 1950s, only to face public outrage when its existence was revealed decades later. What emerges from these examples isn't a clear answer, but a framework for questioning: who benefits from the secrecy, who is harmed, and crucially, who gets left out of the decision. The catacombs of Rome sheltered persecuted Christians, but also enabled corrupt popes to hoard treasures. Modern data tunnels empower both dissidents and dictators. The ethical litmus test may lie in transparency about power itself, not the abolition of all secrets, but ensuring that those who create them remain accountable. After all, the darkest tunnels aren't those hidden from sunlight, but those where control operates unchecked by conscience. Dante's descent into the underworld in the Divine Comedy didn't just map hell, it gave humanity a vocabulary for the subconscious. His 9 concentric circles, each revealing deeper layers of sin and suffering, mirrored the psychological journey we all take when confronting our hidden selves. Centuries later, this template resurfaces in films like The Matrix, where the underground city of Zion becomes both a literal refuge from machines and a metaphor for awakening from societal illusions. The subterranean, in art, is never just a setting, it's a state of mind, a place where characters strip away surface illusions to confront raw truths. Literature teems with these transformative descents. In Victor Hugo's Les Miserables, the Paris sewers become Jean Valjean's path to redemption, a filthy, treacherous labyrinth that paradoxically leads to salvation. Jules Verne's Journey to the Center of the Earth reimagines the underground as a prehistoric wonderland, challenging Victorian-era certainty about science and progress. Even children's stories like Alice's Adventures in Wonderland or the Chronicles of Narnia use rabbit holes and wardrobes as portals to worlds where logic inverts and power dynamics flip. The message is universal: to grow, you must first go down. Modern cinema amplifies this tradition. Pan's Labyrinth blends fascist Spain with a mythical underworld, where Ophelia's trials underground mirror the resistance above. The tunnel scenes in The Third Man turn Vienna's sewers into a moral chessboard, with Orson Welles' Harry Lime literally vanishing into the shadows. Even superhero sagas lean into this trope. Batman's cave isn't just a gadget warehouse, but a psychological anchor tying him to trauma and legacy. These narratives tap into an ancient archetype, the Catacombs or heroic descent, found in myths from Sumerian Inanna to Greek Orpheus. Music and visual arts echo the theme. Pink Floyd's The Wall album artwork depicts subterranean figures marching in unison, a commentary on conformity's grip. Street artists like Banksy weaponized tunnels and subways, their illicit murals reclaiming hidden spaces for public dissent. Video games like BioShock or Metro 2033 transform underground worlds into dystopian mirrors of our own societies, where survival depends on questioning authority. The underground in art isn't passive, it interrogates, rebels, and transforms. What unites these works across time is their subversion of expectations. The Earth's underbelly in the cultural imagination is where hierarchies crumble. Slaves become leaders in Spartacus, mutants forge new societies in the Time Machine, and the marginalized find voice in Les Miserables sewers. This symbolism persists because it's rooted in lived experience, from catacomb-dwelling early Christians to the LGBTQ+ safe spaces of 1980 as underground clubs. When artists evoke the subterranean, they're channeling a primal truth. Real change often begins where the light doesn't reach, in the spaces society overlooks or tries to bury. The underground's cultural power lies in its duality. It's both tomb and womb, a place of death and rebirth. From Dante's sinners to the rebels of the Hunger Games District 13, these stories remind us that darkness isn't just an end. It's a beginning in disguise, a canvas for the most enduring human tales of resistance, revelation, and the unshakable hope that somewhere below, another way waits to be uncovered. Beneath our feet, history is quietly crumbling, not in dramatic collapses, but in slow, invisible decay. The very qualities that made underground networks resilient, their secrecy, their isolation, now make them vulnerable. In Naples, where Greek and Roman tunnels snake beneath modern apartments, groundwater seepage dissolves ancient mortar at an alarming rate. Meanwhile, Istanbul's Byzantine cisterns, once engineering marvels, face threats from subway vibrations and urban runoff. The irony is cruel. Structures that survived sieges and revolutions are now succumbing to something as mundane as neglect. Preservationists have become the unsung guardians of these shadowy realms. Take London's Hidden London team, who transformed abandoned tube stations into immersive museums while painstakingly stabilizing their fragile tilework. In Rome, archaeologists used 3D laser scanning to digitally preserve catacombs before humidity erases early Christian frescoes. Their work is equal parts science and rescue mission, racing against time to document what bulldozers or rising dampness might erase forever. The challenges are immense. How do you conserve a smuggler's tunnel in Morocco when local developers see it as prime real estate? Or protect Shanghai's wartime escape routes when city planners prioritize high-speed rail? Some battles are won through sheer creativity. In Budapest, activists turned a crumbling Cold War bunker into an underground contemporary art space, using cultural cachet to secure restoration funds. Portland's Shanghai tunnels were saved not by government intervention, but by pub owners who realized serving craft beer above the historic passageways drew tourists willing to fund preservation. These hybrid approaches reveal a hard truth: underground sites often survive only by proving their economic worth to the world above. Technology is rewriting what preservation looks like. Belgian researchers developed biogrouting, injecting bacteria into ancient tunnels to secrete natural limestone that bonds crumbling bricks. Drones map unstable sections of Peru's pre-Inca tunnels without risking human explorers. Most remarkably, holographic projections now restore damaged sections of Edinburgh's Blair Street underground vaults,
allowing visitors to experience their original grandeur without invasive reconstruction. Yet the greatest threat isn't physical, it's the loss of collective memory. Many underground networks lack official records, their histories preserved only in oral traditions. When the last sandhog who dug New York's water tunnels passes away, so too does irreplaceable knowledge about their construction. That's why projects like Berlin's Unterwalden Museum train former tunnel guards as tour guides, converting personal experience into public education. Similarly, Detroit's urban explorers collaborate with historians to document the city's Prohibition-era speakeasy tunnels before gentrification seals them forever. The stakes transcend nostalgia. These spaces hold lessons about resilience, how medieval monasteries preserved knowledge during plagues, or how enslaved people navigated treacherous paths to freedom. When a Los Angeles developer accidentally paved over part of the city's historic tunnel system, used by early Mexican immigrants, they didn't just erase bricks, they buried stories of marginalized communities claiming space in a hostile city. Preservation becomes an act of justice, ensuring history isn't just written by those who stayed above ground. Every rescued tunnel, every stabilized crypt is a victory against historical amnesia. In Prague, volunteers cleared decades of debris from Nazi-era escape routes, uncovering handwritten messages from resistance fighters. Beneath Melbourne, conservators discovered that graffiti in old drainage tunnels included Depression-era job seekers' tallies, each scratch mark representing a day spent hunting work. These finds remind us that the underground wasn't just for secrets, it was where ordinary people left traces too honest for the sunlight. The fight continues in unexpected places. Tokyo's government now surveys Edo period sewers for earthquake reinforcement, recognizing their cultural value alongside utility. In Philadelphia, high school students lobby to turn forgotten abolitionist tunnels into a Black history trail. Even digital spaces get involved. Crowdsourced projects like Subterranean Britannica compile global underground sites before they vanish. The work is never done, but neither is history, as long as someone keeps listening to the whispers rising from below. Beneath the surface of our divided world lies a hidden tapestry of connection, woven through centuries by tunnels, caves, and secret passages. These underground networks didn't just move goods or people, they carried ideas, traditions, and hope across borders long before the term globalization existed. Consider the vast Kanat systems of Persia, which inspired similar water tunnels in Morocco, Spain, and even China's Turpan Desert. Though separated by thousands of miles, engineers on opposite ends of the Silk Road solved the same problem: how to sustain life in harsh climates by sharing knowledge through these subterranean channels. The tunnels themselves became silent ambassadors, proving that innovation knows no borders when survival is at stake. Escape routes tell an even more profound story of interdependence. The Underground Railroad didn't stop at the U.S. border. It stretched into Canada, where Black refugees built thriving communities like Africville in Nova Scotia, and south to Mexico, where the Spanish-speaking Republic abolished slavery decades earlier than its northern neighbors. Seminole tribes in Florida sheltered escapees, blending African traditions with Native American practices in a cultural exchange born of shared resistance. Similarly, during the Holocaust, a web of clandestine tunnels and basements connected Jewish families to safe houses across Europe, often relying on strangers who risked everything to guide them. These networks weren't just physical pathways, they were acts of trust spanning languages, religions, and ethnicities. Trade tunnels reveal another dimension of this hidden unity. Beneath the Strait of Gibraltar, smugglers have used underwater caves for centuries to transport goods between Africa and Europe, long before official trade agreements existed.
In Southeast Asia, the Kukai tunnels, often associated with war, were originally dug by merchants evading colonial taxes, creating an underground marketplace that connected Vietnamese villages with Cambodian traders. Even today, the tunnel trade beneath the Egypt-Gaza border continues this ancient tradition, proving that where politics divides, necessity finds a way to connect. The most surprising unifiers might be the tunnels built for faith. From the hidden chapels in Rome's catacombs to the secret Sikh dharamsalas beneath Mughal-era homes in Punjab, these spaces sheltered not just worshippers but the very essence of cultural identity. When Portuguese missionaries brought Christianity to Nagasaki in the 16th century, persecuted converts dug Kakyor Karishatan pits beneath their homes to secretly practice their faith, a tradition that survived underground for over 200 years before re-emerging. These spiritual tunnels created invisible threads between communities, preserving beliefs that would later resurface and flourish. Modern underground networks continue this legacy of connection. The Lowline project in New York transformed an abandoned trolley terminal into a sunlit underground park using fiber optic technology from South Korea, while Helsinki's shared heating tunnels inspired by ancient hypocaust systems, now warm homes from recycled energy sourced across Scandinavia. Even the internet's physical backbone relies on submarine cables snaking beneath oceans, the digital heirs to those first daring merchants who carried silk and spices through mountain passes. The lesson buried in these global networks is clear. Walls and borders are surface illusions. Beneath them, humanity has always found ways to reach each other through shared need, shared ingenuity, and shared defiance. From the enslaved Persian crawling toward freedom to the wartime resistance fighter passing messages through sewers, these hidden pathways whisper a truth louder than any manifesto. Our fates are linked, and no barrier dug deep enough to sever that bond. The next time you walk over a subway grate or past a storm drain, remember, you're standing atop history's greatest collaboration, a testament to what we can achieve when we dare to tunnel toward each other instead of building walls. The underground networks that kept empires alive were more than just physical structures. They were symbols of resilience, ingenuity, and defiance. From ancient aqueducts to digital dark webs, these hidden pathways have shaped history in ways we're still discovering. As we face new challenges, the lessons of the underground remain relevant. Sometimes survival depends on what lies beneath. Think about the Roman aqueducts, their buried channels still carrying water after 2 millennia, or the qanats of Persia, turning deserts into bread baskets without a single pump. These weren't just feats of engineering, they were acts of faith in the future. Proof that civilizations could thrive by working with the earth rather than against it. Fast forward to today, and the same principles apply. Modern cities rely on subterranean fiber optic cables and subway systems, while climate-resistant architecture looks to ancient underground designs for inspiration. The past isn't just a relic, it's a blueprint, but the true power of these networks lies in their paradox. They were built to remain unseen, yet they connected people across continents. The Silk Road's shadowy tunnels moved more than silk. They carried languages, religions, and revolutions. The Underground Railroad wasn't just a route to freedom. It was a manifesto written in footprints and whispered codes. Even the dark web, for all its notoriety, mirrors this duality, a space where activists and criminals alike operate beyond borders, proving that secrecy can both protect and corrupt. What unites these hidden worlds is their defiance of surface-level power. Empires rose and fell, laws were written and broken, but underground, people kept moving, trading, and surviving. The catacombs of Paris sheltered revolutionaries, the Kukai tunnels outlasted armies, and Cold War bunkers stood ready for a doomsday that never came. These spaces remind us that control is often an illusion. The Earth itself is porous, and so are the systems we build upon it. As we grapple with modern crises, climate change, digital privacy, overcrowded cities, the underground offers unexpected wisdom. Maybe the solution to rising seas isn't taller seawalls, but floating subterranean neighborhoods like those proposed in Tokyo. Perhaps the antidote to surveillance isn't more cameras, but decentralized networks inspired by medieval monks' hidden libraries. History shows us that when the world above becomes hostile, humanity doesn't retreat, it digs deeper. So the next time you walk over a subway grate or descend into a basement, pause for a moment. Beneath your feet lies a hidden legacy of tunnels, cables, and chambers, each one a testament to our ability to adapt, resist, and endure. The underground isn't just where we store pipes and wires, it's where we've always hidden our best ideas, waiting for the right moment to bring them to light. The future, it seems, belongs not just to those who reach for the stars, but to those who remember to listen to the whispers rising from below. Now we'd love to hear from you. What's the most fascinating underground network you've encountered? Share your thoughts in the comments, and don't forget to subscribe for more deep dives into history's hidden chapters. The past is full of surprises, and we're just